club in August.
Whatever happens today, Stefan Edberg will be saluted by an adoring tennis public. In a 14-year career playing the game he loves, he's endeared himself to generations of fans. The last back-to-back winner of the US Open, he was 2 times the Wimbledon champion. And back in August of 1990, he was the #1 ranked player in the world. He came to his final Grand Slam without expectation. His supporters, though, knew better. He's had a smooth path to the quarter-finals. His opening match was against the present Wimbledon champion, Richard Krajicek.
Each match is going to be tough, and as I know, it's physically very tough to go through all the matches here. And what I'm really looking at is getting through the first week here, and hopefully be here the second week. That would be nice.
He humiliated Krajicek, beating the #5 seed in straight sets. Round 2 beckoned in the hothouse of Flushing Meadows.
6-3, 6-3.
He'd already got the measure of Bernd Karbacher when the German had to retire with a hamstring injury. Edberg took his seat in round 3. And 3 sets was all he needed against the Dutchman Paul Haarhuis to take his place in the last 16 and in the match against perhaps his #1 fan, Tim Henman. Yes, Stefan Edberg has been a favourite with the crowds ever since he first stepped foot on court. And Peter Fleming, how on earth does Tim Henman prepare for a match against somebody that he knows so well as a practice partner here in Britain?
I think that Tim will understand, and has spoken about this really, that he's not playing Stefan Edberg. He's just playing the ball. That's what you really have to do. Here comes the ball. What shot am I going to hit off of that? If you can do that, if you can isolate it down to that little piece, then you don't get into getting psyched out about, this is a huge occasion and freezing. And I think that's what we'll see him do.
Well, let's take a very short break. We're waiting for the players to come out on court at Flushing Meadow. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's about giving the best coverage. Sunderland make their debut appearance.
Tim Henman had turned just 8 years old when Stefan Edberg played his first professional match back in September of 1982. He's dreamed of playing him in a Grand Slam match. He now has the opportunity. It's the quarter-finals of the US Open that they are trying to reach. Let's join our commentators now and find out what the atmosphere is like there for this match at Flushing Meadow, and welcome Prue McMillan and Jerry Williams. Jerry, what are the Americans making of this match?
They're not going overboard about it because there isn't an American playing, but I think it's fair to say that the Americans, at least everyone I've spoken to, is immensely impressed with Tim Henman. John McEnroe said, I think it was last night I heard him say on television, that he's the best English player he's ever seen. That would be in his career, and I think he said that was since Buster Mottram and John Lloyd. Yes, I'd agree with that, certainly. But of course, among the Brits, including us, there's great excitement. We've lived through some pretty dreary years, and this is fun.
Jerry, you talked with Tim Henman at length yesterday, and we showed a little bit of the interview earlier on. What do you make of his confidence, his demeanour at the moment?
Well, he's the same Tim, always, to me. I've said before about the way he plays, that he's the only British player in recent years who, when I watch, I don't feel nervous. And that's because he seems so completely in control of himself. He doesn't play on emotional highs and lows. He goes out and he just plays, and he clearly enjoys the atmosphere. He likes New York. He doesn't mind all the hustle and bustle here. It's very impressive to be with him.
And have you managed to have a chat with Stefan at any stage during the last couple of days to find out his thoughts on this match?
Well, to be honest, he's not the sort of person to air these things, is he? He's a man of few words, all of them nice. But there's nothing treacly about the atmosphere here, simply because he won't let it be played that way. Deep down, I suppose he must have recurring feelings of nostalgia, but this is the most understated of people.
OK, Jerry, well, that's it from my end of this operation. I'll hand it over to you at Flushing Meadow, and do enjoy.
10 players in the game today who have the best chance of getting into the top 10 and staying there are Mark Philippoussis and Tim Henman. And he said that he'd spoken to David Felgate, who's Henman's coach, because Philippoussis is coming across to his place near Luton in Harpenden soon to spend a few days there when he gets time off from the circuit. And they're going to practice at, I think he said, the Vauxhall Centre in Luton, where they have 2 new indoor courts apparently. And he's hoping that with David Felgate they can arrange for the 2 of them to practice together. Now, for an outsider, Peter McNamara, to put Henman, or at least Henman's potential, alongside Mark Philippoussis, I find very exciting. Come on, be impartial. You're an impartial chap.
Well, I think the beauty of this match and the beauty of Henman's game is the fact that, as I've said before about players, he's got a game for all time, for all ages. And I think it's that impresses people, and the fact, of course, that he uses it. And I think this match is going to be not really a study in contrast at all, as we have a look at umpire Moreno, who will be in charge of this classic. It's the fact that Henman plays all shots, and he doesn't play it very particularly in the modern fashion, in the modern manner. To me, he's got far more of a classical game. And I think that really appeals to perhaps the purists in tennis. And it's one of the reasons why, amongst all the players, Edberg remains one of my favorites to watch. And Henman, playing along those same lines, is a favorite, therefore, of many ex-players and many coaches like Peter McNamara. Now, how well he's going to do really depends on Henman and the will within him. That's going to either keep him round about 25 in the world, as I've predicted he can attain. And if he's going to get higher, it's a fuse. It's an inner sort of combustion chamber that really nobody can actually ascertain. It seems that he has it. What I like about him is that he's very forthright when he's asked a question. If he's playing well, he says he's playing well. There's no sort of false modesty about him. And the thing that I liked first about Henman was without ever seeing him hit a tennis ball. I saw some of his results in the back of Beyond, and I thought, well, here's a guy who's taken courage into his hands, traveled the world, and is getting results. Now, that's pretty unusual.
Tell you where I think Henman is today as a tennis player. It seems to me that with a few notable exceptions, and I'm talking of the sort of 5 top players in the world, almost anybody that Henman plays now, he has a worthwhile chance against. That's not to say I think he would beat them all. I think he's going to have some bad losses, just like anyone else, because he's human. But almost never do I feel when I see him play, well, he has no chance here. Peter Fleming, Peter, you've been out here. What do you think? What's the American view? Your view, not the American view.
Yeah, well, my view is that Tim is going to go, he's going to go right to the top of the game, and here's his first chance to show us, so let's watch.
Right to the top. That's what I like about Fleming. He's prepared to say what he thinks. Henman serves.
Yes, don't be too worried about the strapping on Henman's thigh. He wore it in his last match against Todd Martin. He was less strapped than Martin, and certainly a far better player on the night. I'm sure Martin was quite a bit handicapped, and one has to take that into account when judging the result of Henman. Was one of the niggers in the woodpile that one could almost float across the screen here is one Mr. Tony Pickard.
Edberg was bound to come in against Henman. He'll come in more than anyone else he's played here at this year's US Open, and particularly that's going to happen on Edberg's serve. Doesn't mess about, obviously not unnerved, possibly inspired. 1-love, Henman leads first set. What do you think, Fru, about when in the next game Edberg serves and volleys, or most of the time at least?
Well, I think the thing to be looking for is just how well Henman handles the high bouncing serve. Todd Martin's got a high bouncing second serve, but it doesn't have the spin. It's like a sort of straightforward fast bowlers. It doesn't move the ball coming off the pitch at you, whereas Edberg's to Henman will have a lot of spin and quite a bit of variation as well. And it's going to be important to see whether Henman elects to chip it or whether he tries to drive through the ball. I imagine he'll really be trying to drive through the ball, because I don't think Henman at this stage has got a particularly good chipped return. And I think that's inevitably going to be a factor. It always is when you're talking about serve volleyers, how well they serve. If they don't serve well, they're out of here.
Edberg to serve. Sit quickly, please.
I thought it was a good first game by Henman. He was dropping the head just a little bit. That's nerves, but he was at least stroking his ground strokes very well. There was that lifted return, which is difficult to combat. You've got to take the ball early, or else you've got to have really steely wrists.